Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The early morning sun streamed in through the windows of the cozy farmhouse, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where Albert cooked breakfast for his family. The sizzling bacon and scent of fresh coffee filled the air as he scooped a mound of fluffy scrambled eggs onto 3 plates.
"Breakfast is ready,"
he called out, setting the table just as his 2 young sons, Michael and Christopher, came thundering down the stairs.
"Morning, Dad!"
the boys chorused as they slid into their seats. Albert ruffled their hair affectionately before going to wake his wife, Emily. She emerged a few minutes later, tying back her long blonde hair as she greeted her family with a smile. They all dug into breakfast, chatting about their plans for the day on the farm. After the dishes were cleared, Albert kissed Emily goodbye as the boys grabbed their lunch pails.
"Be good for your mother today,"
Albert instructed as he headed out to the fields. The boys nodded, giving him quick hugs before running outside to help their mom feed the chickens. At just 8 and 6 years old, Michael and Christopher were Albert and Emily's pride and joy. The couple had dreamed of raising their family on a farm, away from the bustle of the city. Now they spent their days surrounded by nature, watching their sons grow up strong and kind. As a third-generation farmer, Albert took pride in teaching the boys about hard work and responsibility. Each evening when he came in from the fields, they'd run to greet him, faces flushed from a day of adventures. While Albert cleaned up from work, Emily would have the boys set the table or help her stir a pot on the stove. At dinner, the family would gather to enjoy Emily's home-cooked meals. The boys would chatter about their day, making their parents laugh with funny stories. Albert would remind them to eat their vegetables while sneaking the dog scraps under the table. After clearing the dishes, the 4 would retire to the living room. Albert would read the paper as Emily sewed quilt squares. Michael would set up his toy farm animals while Christopher flipped through the picture books his mom made. Once the boys were tucked snugly into bed, Albert would join Emily on the porch swing to look out over the moonlit fields. They treasured this time together as a family, feeling truly blessed. The years passed happily as the boys grew, helping their parents work the land. Then one brisk November morning, tragedy struck. Albert was out feeding the cows when a shriek pierced the air. He raced for the house, heart pounding with fear at the sound. Inside, he found Michael sobbing over Emily's lifeless body, her face forever frozen in a look of surprise. At just 34, a sudden heart attack had taken her from them. The family was shattered, left adrift in a sea of grief. Albert took over running the household and farm as the boys struggled to understand their mother's death. For days, Michael refused to speak, anger brewing inside the sensitive 12-year-old. Christopher's chin quivered constantly as he clung to his brother, only 8 and needing comfort. Albert was at a loss, overwhelmed with his own sorrow and the monumental task of raising the boys alone. He decided to double down on the masculine lessons he'd been teaching, believing it would make them strong men their mother would be proud of. He put the boys to work on chores starting at dawn before school, toughening them up. In the evenings, he drove them hard, doing farm tasks, allowing no tears or complaints. Dinner was eaten in silence as exhaustion overtook conversation. At night, Albert retreated to the porch with his grief, no longer reading to the boys. He left Michael to soothe Christopher's nightmares, too lost in his own mourning to help. As the years passed, Albert remained staunch in his stoic parenting, determined to raise the boys to embody masculine ideals. He set high expectations for obedience, skill, and bravery. But despite Albert's intentions, his traditional masculinity had unintended effects on Michael and Christopher's development. Lacking a mother's nurture and connection, the boys turned inward. Michael became more sensitive, developing interests in poetry and music. A budding talent for art emerged as he needed a creative outlet for his emotions. He turned to nature and animals for solace. Christopher also grew more gentle, preferring reading quietly indoors to rambunctious play. He loved baking and would often be found flipping through his mother's old recipe books. Emily's sewing basket called to him, and he taught himself basic stitches. At school, both boys endured teasing for their unconventional pursuits. Albert was bewildered when Michael begged for an art set for Christmas, and Christopher requested baking ingredients. He tried to steer them toward more masculine hobbies, but it only seemed to drive them further into their feminine interests. Seeing them retreat made Albert's heart ache with worry. Were he and Emily failing their sons by not providing a mother's influence? He didn't know how to bridge the growing gap. The years passed in this uneasy strain as Albert struggled to connect with the sensitive young men his sons were becoming. Michael turned inward, pouring his emotions into creating art and music. Christopher found refuge in the kitchen, exploring new recipes and textiles. Albert came to accept their interests begrudgingly, though he still pressed them to help with farm tasks. He reminded himself that they were good boys at heart, even if different than he'd imagined. But a tension lingered in the house where Emily's warm presence had once filled the halls with joy and laughter. One evening, after the dishes were cleared, Albert worked up the courage to breach the divide.
Come with me, boys,
He said gruffly, leading them out to the porch. He settled into the creaking swing and motioned for them to join him. The three sat staring out at the moonlit farm in silence. The years had built up a wall between them that felt insurmountable. Albert searched for the right words, finally speaking in a pained, halting voice.
I know I haven't been the father you boys deserved these past years. Your mother's death broke something in me. I thought being tough would help you, would honor her memory and keep this family going. But I see now that I failed you. He turned to face his sons, eyes glistening. You both have become thoughtful, talented young men despite my mistakes. Your mother would be so proud of who you are. And I'm sorry I haven't said that enough. I just miss her so damn much, and I don't know how to do this without her.
Michael reached for his father's weathered hand, voice thick with emotion.
We miss her too, Dad. Every single day. We know you did your best for us.
Christopher chimed in softly.
We're still a family no matter what.
Albert pulled his sons close, hugging them tight as tears streamed down his stubbled cheeks. The three held each other in the moonlight, feeling Emily's spirit embracing them. Though the hurt could never fully heal, in that moment, their shared grief brought them together again. They were a family, and they would move forward with love. Years go by, Michael wiped the sweat from his brow as he hauled the last bale of hay into the barn. At 17, his lean frame had finally caught up with his height. Though he still preferred his art and music, he could now keep pace with the chores his dad assigned. He found Christopher sitting on a hay bale, looking pensive as he sketched in a notebook. Michael ruffled his brother's hair. "What you drawing there, kiddo?" Christopher flushed and snapped the book shut. At 15, he was slight and bookish, more comfortable baking than farming. "It's nothing," he mumbled, not meeting Michael's eyes. Michael's gaze softened.
Hey, you know you can tell me anything, right?
Christopher hesitated, then slowly reopened his sketchbook to a portrait of himself as a girl. Michael's eyes widened in surprise. I don't feel right as a boy," Christopher whispered. "Some days I look in the mirror and it's like a stranger staring back." Michael sat down heavily, thoughts churning. After a long moment, he met his brother's anxious face.
I think I understand, because sometimes I feel that way too.
It was Christopher's turn to look shocked. Michael gave a sad half-smile.
We're more alike than I realized, sis.
Christopher's eyes filled with tears. "So you mean you're like me? A girl deep down?" Michael nodded, taking his hand.
I am. And I want you to know that you never have to pretend or hide who you are from me. We're in this together.
The siblings embraced, feeling a weight lift at this shared revelation. All the years of secrecy and shame seemed to fall away.
What do we do now, though?
Christopher asked nervously. "How do we tell Dad?" Michael sighed, stomach knotting at the thought. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Over the next few weeks, the pair discreetly researched transgender topics at the library after school. They stayed up late whispering about gender dysphoria, chosen names, pronouns, and more. One evening at dinner, Michael caught Christopher's eye and gave a small nod. It was time. They had practiced this conversation for days. Michael cleared his throat. Dad, Christopher and I have something important we need to discuss with you. Albert looked up in surprise from his roast chicken. All right then, let's hear it. The boys shared a steadying glance. Michael continued. We've done a lot of thinking and researching, and we've realized we're transgender. Albert froze, fork hovering midair. You're what now? Transgender, Dad. It means the gender we were assigned at birth doesn't align with who we really are. Christopher piped up, voice trembling slightly. Michael jumped back in. I'm a woman inside, and I'd like to start going by Michelle and she, her pronouns. Christopher feels the same way and wants to be called Christine and use she, her too. They studied their father nervously. Albert slowly set down his silverware, face clouding. An uneasy silence descended on the table. Finally, Albert spoke, voice low. Now you listen here. I've tried to raise you boys right, the way your mother would have wanted. And this just ain't normal. He shook his head. You're confused, that's all. All these feminine hobbies I let slide, they've clearly warped your thinking. Albert's tone hardened. I won't have any son of mine parading around pretending to be a girl. You're men, understand? And it's time you started acting like it. Michelle felt her hopes sinking, but persisted gently. Dad, we've felt this way our whole lives deep down. It's not the hobbies or the chores. Our spirits are just female. Please, Christine implored. We want you to understand this is who we truly are. But Albert was unmoved. I won't hear any more of this nonsense. No child of mine is going to embarrass this family and make a mockery of their mother's memory. He stood abruptly. You two better get these sinful ideas out of your heads, or you'll regret it. I'm going out to the barn. Don't follow. And with that, he stormed off into the night, screen door slamming behind him. Christine dropped her head into her hands, choking back sobs. Michelle quickly moved to comfort her. Shh, it's okay. We knew he might react badly at first. She stroked her sister's hair. This is new for him. He just needs some time. Christine sniffled. Do you really think he'll come around? Michelle tried to make her voice confident. Of course. Dad loves us. He's just set in his ways. We have to be patient. But in truth, Michelle shared Christine's doubts. Their father could be stubborn as an ox when he set his mind to something. Still, they had hope. He was a good man under the gruff exterior. In the weeks that followed, things were tense around the farmhouse. Albert refused to acknowledge the conversation, reverting to the boys' birth names and male pronouns. At meals, his gaze darted away whenever one of them spoke. The sisters persisted gently, reminding him of their chosen names and identities. But he remained staunch in his rejection of what he saw as their delusions. Work around the farm grew strained. Albert snapped harshly over mistakes and doled out extra difficult chores. He drove the pair relentlessly, as if hard labor could shake these foolish notions from their heads. Christine bore the brunt of his ire, her slender arms struggling to lug heavy buckets and tools too big for her hands. Michelle did her best to intervene, but could only shield her so much. At night, they would collapse into bed exhausted. Christine's fingers would be red and blistered from hauling splintering wood for hours. Michelle's back ached from tilling the rocky fields. But it was their father's emotional distance that pained them most. Over breakfast one morning, Christine timidly broached the idea of speaking with a gender therapist in town. But Albert slammed his fist on the table, rattling the plates. Ain't no child of mine going to see some quack who's gonna try convincing you you're a girl, he bellowed. I've had just about enough of this nonsense. Christine shrank back, tears welling up. Michelle touched her arm in solidarity before leveling a stern gaze at her father. Dad, this is serious. We're your children and we need your support right now. Can't you try to understand? Albert shoved back his chair angrily. I understand just fine. And as long as you're under my roof, you'll live by my rules. You two better drop this crazy idea if you know what's good for you. With that, he stalked off to start the day's work, leaving the sisters crestfallen. Michelle squeezed Christine's hand. It'll be okay, sis. We'll get through this together. It had been nearly 2 years since Michelle and Christine had revealed they were transgender. At first, Albert reacted harshly in his confusion and grief, but gradually the sting had begun to lessen. Seeing their perseverance despite his rejection wore down his resistance. They were still the bright, kind souls he'd raised after all. Lately, he found himself watching them more closely. The way Michelle would tuck her hair back while cooking, an unconscious feminine gesture, or how Christine's face lit up when she was immersed in her sewing projects. Their spirits seemed lighter since embracing their identities, even with his disapproval. Albert thought back to his declaration that no child of his would bring shame to Emily's memory. But was her memory really served by rejecting their own children? The question gnawed at him. That night after dinner, he cleared his throat gruffly. You two finish up the dishes. I'm going to head out for a bit. Michelle and Christine exchanged a surprised glance as their father grabbed his truck keys and left without another word. His behavior had been growing more pensive over the past months. This unexplained excursion was out of character. Albert drove into town, his stomach in knots. He pulled up to a nondescript building and sat staring at the sign for several long minutes, stealing his nerve. Finally, he got out and walked inside. Welcome! Are you here for the support group? A cheerful woman greeted Albert as he entered the room. He shifted his weight uncomfortably.
I reckon I am,
he mumbled.
just here to learn more.
The facilitator smiled warmly, putting him at ease. Albert took a seat as other parents trickled in. Their stories sounded so similar to his own, children coming out as transgender, confusion giving way to rejection. But now these parents were here to understand, to find a path forward. As Albert listened, his perspective began to shift. He heard about chosen names, pronouns, social and medical transition options. He learned about gender dysphoria, the distress caused when the mind and body don't align. The depth of Michelle and Christine's struggles hit home. After the meeting, Albert approached the facilitator. My kids came out as transgender a couple years back, he explained gruffly. I didn't take it well, but I think deep down I knew I had to come here to really listen and try to make things right. The facilitator squeezed his arm. It takes courage to open your mind and heart. Your children are lucky to have you. She handed him a stack of brochures and books. There's so much more to learn. We're here to support you each step of the way. Albert drove home in thoughtful silence. Seeing the lights on, he knew Michelle and Christine waited up for him. It was time to start mending what had been broken. That weekend, Albert called the kids out to the porch. They eyed him warily as he fidgeted with a folded pamphlet. Finally, he met their gaze, eyes glistening. I owe you both an apology. A big one, he began haltingly. I've been hard-headed and unfair to you since you came out, but I'm trying to understand now. He held up the pamphlet titled Supporting Your Transgender Child. I attended a parents' support group in town, learned a lot that I should have made the effort to know years ago. I can't promise to be perfect, but I aim to do right by you both from here on out. Michelle and Christine teared up, scarcely believing the transformation in their father. Albert cleared his throat gruffly and opened his arms. The trio embraced, holding each other close beneath the dusky evening sky. In the months that followed, Albert slowly but surely researched legal name changes for the girls and respected their new identities. He consulted with their doctor about hormone therapy options. At home, Albert finally heard their stories and struggles without judgment. He learned makeup tips to share with Christine and critiqued Michelle's poetry and paintings. They talked openly, bridging years of painful silence. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.